Hey, it's Allison here. Thanks so much for joining me on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be doing a Thursday video. So check out my channel, subscribe, because every Thursday I will be sharing a new video, and it's going to be along the lines of just how to deal with real life issues as a Christian woman, how to kind of come at something that we deal with in a society as women, hot topics going on right now, but how to kind of look at that through the lens of the Bible and as a Christian. And so this is my second video, and I'm going to start off right now something pretty sensitive to me and to a lot of women, something very near and dear to my heart. And if you personally have not dealt with this, you probably know somebody very close to you who is, and that is the issue of infertility. And so I want to share with you guys, I actually have a video that I'm going to link below that I did on one of my friends' pages where I share more about my actual infertility and how I prayed through that. The prayer that I prayed and how I had expectant hope through the end of that process. Today I want to talk to you about some specific steps. So it's 3 specific steps I'm going to share with you on what I did to come to a place where I was able to cope with it. And so I found out about 12 years ago, my husband and I started getting like the testing done. We've been married for a year, or we've been trying, I think, to have a baby for a year. And so after a year, they say you should probably start to get testing. So we found out then that we were had some infertility issues. And our doctor actually told us that they were pretty much to the point that like you don't really even need to do IVF. It's just really going to take a miracle for you to get pregnant. So many of you know, if you look at my infertility, the other videos I have posted below, I just had a baby. So took 12 and a half years, but God said now is the time for a miracle. So don't give up hope. And I'm going to talk about that too. But that was us, 12 and a half years ago is receiving that news. So we immediately started looking to the path of adoption, and God led us seriously through a miraculous, amazing story to our son, Josiah, who is now 9.5 years old. And then when he was about 3.5 or 4, we started wanting to, continue to grow our family. And so we signed on with an adoption agency and started that process all over again. Now that is actually the time and that process with going forward with wanting to adopt our second child where I really started to feel a lot of the grieving and those feelings of like kind of anger, those negative feelings, just that going through that grieving process of like I want to have more kids, and I have to go through like this long adoption process, this expensive adoption process. I wish I could just have a baby, like every other woman that I was seeing. And at that time, truly almost every other woman in my life that was close to me was pregnant. So I have 3 sisters, 2 out of the 3 were pregnant. And on my husband's side, he has 5 cousins that he's really, really close to. 4 out of their 5 wives were also pregnant. This is all at the same time, while we are like trying to go through the process of signing on with an adoption agency, working towards getting our second child. And so I'm just in a pregnancy sandwich is what I called it. I'm just everywhere around me, everywhere we go, to birthday parties, to family get-togethers, to Thanksgiving, to everything, there is pregnant people. And so it just kind of hit me in the face. And for the first time ever, I really got down about it. I got like somewhat very, very sad, somewhat angry. I also started dealing for the first time with anxiety, which stemmed from going through a really hard season of grieving, and then also just overworking myself, pressuring myself, not resting enough from. So all of that kind of accumulated into me having anxiety for the first time ever. It was not something that I had ever dealt with before. But it was just kind of this like perfect storm of events and just, not enough rest and not trusting God with my work and overworking myself. All these kind of things accumulated, and I started also dealing with a lot of anxiety. So as I was in this place, I knew that I had to work through this. Like I had to come to a place where my grieving of my infertility was not owning me. It was not controlling me. Now, every woman is different. Every woman goes through this process differently. So this is my story, and I'm going to give you 3 things that I did that helped me through that process to come to the place where I was not happy, not like, woo, this, I was happy. I am happy now that I went through it because God gave me 2 of my children through adoption. So I'm thankful for this process at this point in my life. But when I was in the middle of grieving it, I knew I needed to get to a place of peace. And I couldn't live my life in anger. I couldn't live my life crying on my bed every day. I couldn't live my life not able to fully work to my fullest because I was having so much anxiety. Like I had to work through that. And so this is what I did. And I hope that it gives you some encouragement if you or someone going through it, but just know that it's okay if your process is longer, if it's shorter, if it's different than mine. Because there's certain things, one thing I learned is that there's certain things that are so deep that only God and time can heal it. And that time looks different for all of us. But I do want to encourage you that we do not have to live in our sadness. We do whatever that thing is, whether it's infertility or something else. Like we don't have to. We want to grieve it. We want to work through that process, but it doesn't have to define us. It doesn't have to be there forever. And so this is what I did while I was in that pregnancy sandwich. And so the first thing I did is, again, I knew I had to get to a place mentally of peace. And not peace like I'm completely happy, but peace with the plan that God had for my life. I had to come to peace with God and know that He has a good plan for me. It's not the plan I ever imagined. When I was a little girl, what did I play? I played house. That's what I played mostly with my sisters. And that was not part of my plan. That was not part of my dream. As women, I think we have these dreams of a family. Most of us do. Even if we still want to, work or have a career or something like that, we have a dream of being a mom. And many of us do. Now, not all of us, but many of us. And so it's hard when you realize that your dream, what is in your head, it's not happening. And I had to come to a place where I just trusted God, and I came to peace actually with God, with my life circumstances. I think this could be related to a lot of other things in life besides just what I'm talking about here with infertility. I read a book by Priscilla Shirer during this time. It's called God is Able. It's a huge part of my testimony in this area. But I highly recommend it just for anybody who kind of deals with what I'm just talking about, as far as like, you need to come to peace with something in your life, and you need to come to peace with God about it. Because the truth is, as Priscilla says, that we want to believe that, and we need to believe that God is able. He is able, but it's up to Him, and He's going to choose if He actually does it or not, because He sees the bigger picture. I just read in my quiet time yesterday from the beginning of 1 John verses 1 through 4 about how God is the beginning, Jesus is the beginning, and He's eternal. And so He sees like this whole big picture that we don't see. And I'm not saying that to sound trite of just like, you got to see the whole picture, you got to just trust Him. It's true. We are a little part of this big plan, and He sees the big picture, and so I can trust Him. I can even look back now at that time, and I can see, we've done that before, all before in our lives, where we can, a few years later, we're like, okay, I see how it fits. But at the time, it's really hard. And so we want to believe that God is able. He could do it. And if he chooses to, that's his prerogative. I don't always have to get my way, my dream, the image in my head. I am not entitled to that. God is not I'm not God's boss. And so I am working at this point in my story. I'm really working through trusting him. I'm just working on coming to peace with him, and just trusting that his plan for me is good, and that he sees me, he hears me, he hasn't forgotten me, he hasn't left me. So I highly recommend that book if that is something that you deal with, by Priscilla Shirer, God is Able. But that's the first thing I had to understand, is God's not mean. He's not mean to me, and that I can trust him and know that that I can come to peace with the plan that he has prepared for my life. Number 2, so I got more, by the way, I got more honest with God in my prayers. I read a lot of Psalms, and I dug deeper into the Bible. There was a time where I kind of pulled away for a short time, and then I just said, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get deeper. And so I encourage you to take that step as well. If you are feeling that, God's mad at me, God's mean, I don't get it, and just that struggle that it's okay to go through. But I came to a point where I just had to choose. I'm going to get deeper with God. I'm going to pursue the Bible, look at the Psalms. There's a lot of very honest prayers in there, so I encourage you to do that. Number 2. So number 1 is I just had to come to a place of peace with God. And number 2 is I believed that I would have a family. I can remember Paul's aunt telling me after we found out about her infertility, and she just told me, she looked at me and she said, you are going to be a mom. You are going to have a family. And I just chose to believe that. It was going to look different than what I had imagined it to be, but I just believed I am going to have a family. And I just really, really clung to that. Now for us, we went down the path of adoption, and then 12 years later, had our surprise pregnancy. But I just believed, I clung to that. Number 3, and the last thing I'll mention here, and how I came to peace and coped with my infertility, is that I really chose to not be offended when other women got pregnant. I chose to not be sad. I told you, everybody around me was pregnant. I'm sure if you deal with infertility, this has been an issue. Now, I want to be really sensitive about this, because you may not be at that place where you can just choose to not feel sad about other women getting pregnant. And that's okay. If you have to go through a season where you don't go to baby showers, or you don't go to Mother's Day events at church, if you have to just say, you know what, I had to have some mental health protection for a season, I think that's fine. And you do that. I do believe we want to come to a place, all of us, where we are not offended by it. And I came to this place because I went through number 1, which I came to a place where I was at peace with God about my life circumstances. And I really worked through that by getting deeper into the Bible and honest in my prayers. And then number 2, I really believed I would have a family. And for me, it was through adoption. I then was able to hear other women getting pregnant, go to baby showers, and I wasn't depressed. I remember one of my sisters, when she had her first pregnancy, she was my younger sister, and she actually pulled me aside before she told anybody else and told me, and she was crying because she knew I couldn't have children. And she so much did not want to hurt me, but obviously it was a huge blessing. It was her first baby. And I remember making that decision right there, no one will feel that they have to tiptoe around me about their happiness and their blessings. And so I was able to do that because of number 1 and 2, coming to peace with God, and because of my own belief that I was going to experience that joy. And so I just encourage you to go through the process. If you know somebody, or and if you do know somebody going through the infertility process, I would encourage you to not tell them what their process is, and encourage them and listen. Encourage them and listen, and allow them to relate their real feelings to you, and pray with them, and ask them, how can I pray for you? But I would encourage all women dealing with infertility like me to go through that process and come to a place where you can genuinely be happy for other women, because you know that it's going to happen for you too. And you trust God with the plan that you have for your life, even though it is hard, and even though it is like different than what we wanted. And I say that with all empathy and sensitivity, and going through it myself, going through it as well. So, and I'll just close with this story. It was really interesting because we were at a big family event on my husband's side, and my niece, her name's Hannah. She was at the time, I think around 5 years old. I think she was around 5 years old. And she was this is when I was in the pregnancy sandwich, like everyone around me was pregnant. So we're at this family event, and she's like, wow, Auntie, she called me Auntie. She's like, wow, Auntie, everybody's pregnant except for you. And you know how kids they just say it. And my niece is really observant and really thoughtful. And I was just like, yeah, it's yes. And she looked at me and she said, it's going to happen for you soon. I know it. And when kids say something and you're like, that came, children, have sometimes you think they're more in tune. They just have that childlike faith. And it was like, I think she's right. And we're going through the adoption process and have been waiting to be matched with a birth mom for almost a year. Actually, almost a year and a half. And little did we know that the next month we were matched, and we received our daughter, Abigail. And so she and we joke about it now, but all those girls who are pregnant, we actually were the first ones to have a baby. We're we swooped in and we beat all of y'all. That's what we tell them. I don't know if they think it's funny, but my husband's cousin, Kristen, she had a baby 2 or 3 days later after Abigail was born, and we adopted her. So we were the first ones to have the baby, and so we just could never have it. We could have never imagined that or predicted that, but God knew. And so it just taught me again to come to a place of peace, and that God, He's not forgotten us, and He sees the bigger picture, and He is working. He was all those prayers, all those times I was crying, all those times I had anxiety and was just up at night thinking and praying and begging God for a baby. He was working. He was working, and I had no idea. But it really taught me just to trust Him with the circumstances of my life. And it's not always easy, it's not always easy, but I'm honest with Him, and I rely back on my experiences where He has shown me, and just it helps me to move forward in knowing that I can trust Him. And so I hope this has encouraged you in whatever you're going through, to trust Him as well. So, all right, thanks so much. If you have any questions, I'm going to be doing some adoption, frequently asked question videos. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. If you have anything I can pray for you about, especially about infertility or adoption, please let me know below. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday.